I took a mental health day today. And in America, we're so conditioned to believe that any time off or any time that you're not being productive is wasted time. And I felt very off. I have a lot of personal stuff going on with my family, and maybe I'll talk about that at a later point, but suffice to say, it's a prime example of me riding my sacred wave as to what I should do. And I feel like the universe and God are testing me. And so I woke up this morning and I went to the gym with my daughter and I walked for maybe 20 minutes, took a nice little bike ride. It was like 60 degrees out. And by bike, I mean motorcycle. Got home, did the regular stuff I normally do. And then after dropping my son off, I decided that I kind of wanted something aligned for breakfast. Now, it's been about 4 hours since I've been awake, and my PHS, primary health system, is cold thirst digestion. It's not designed to process heavy shit early in the morning, basically. So I asked my VitaBot what I should have for breakfast, and it suggested something light. And I said, okay, so how about I'm kind of feeling like I want a egg white omelet with cheese and tomatoes, maybe some ham, some mushrooms. And it said, that's perfect for your design, actually, and here's why. And it explained why that would all fit well for me. And I said, I'm feeling a little bit off. I thought maybe after breakfast I would go swim some laps at the pool. We have a YMCA pass. I go to the gym every morning, but sometimes I've wanted to go to the pool and swim laps, and I've just made excuses not to. And then I said, and then after that, maybe I'll come home and take a nap, and just kind of recharge. And the VitaBot was great about explaining to me why that movement is a good idea and why taking a nap would be a good reset. But something really interesting happened to me. So after I went for the swim, I decided that I was going to hop on the bike and go for a quick ride. I found myself wanting to see something, a local attraction, if you will. It's North America's second largest Buddha statue. Now, that is wild to me that that's in my little town in the middle of nowhere, right? Or just on the outskirts of it. So I decided to punch it into maps and see where it was, and it said that it's open 24/7. So I thought, you know what? Why not? Should I do this? And I got a sacral yes. And so I hopped on the map.
I hopped on the map. Why not?
I hopped on the bike and I went to this monastery. Now, I didn't know what I was expecting at all. It was just right off the highway. So I hop on, I get on the ride, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying the quiet. And the funny thing is, while I was eating breakfast, but before I went swimming, I thought, I'm taking a mental health day. I'd already decided that, right? And so I thought, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what I want to get out of this. I just need some quiet. There's so much noise, so much negativity between the internet and just the chaos of the news and the pressures of a job, So I thought, I have some personal time saved up. I'm going to take a mental health day. So anyway, I get pulled to go check this out. I hop on the bike and I'm riding 65 on the highway, which is pretty exhilarating if you've ever been on a motorcycle. And so I pop onto, I turn and I see that it's a house. Almost looks like one of those old motels that has like several doors and rooms, but it has a huge sign that says that it's the Buddhist monastery, the Iowa chapter of the Buddhist monastery or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. And so I pull around back, and this is where it's weird. So I pull around the motorcycle back, and I just kind of park, and I see these two people in nice outfits, and they're talking to some construction guy who is working on something. And he walks up to, there's a man and a woman, and the man walks up to me, and he goes, hey, do you live here? And I said, no, I just came here looking for a little bit of solace, some quiet, and some peace. And he goes,
here, let me hand you this. Let me show you something.
And he gave me his business card. It said jw.org. So Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I respect and appreciate anybody that's on a spiritual mission. I respect and appreciate anybody who's willing to go out, knock on doors of perfect strangers. But it takes a certain level of conviction and dedication to go up to a Buddhist monastery and knock on the door and want to talk to them about converting Buddhist monks, actual Buddhist monks, to the Kingdom Hall. I was kind of, and I even said that. I was like, wow, I didn't know that Jehovah's Witnesses came to Buddhist monasteries. He goes,
Oh, we go everywhere.
he goes,
This is our,
and he called it territory, which I thought was kind of funny. I said, okay, well, I said, good luck, have a great day, stay safe. I'm being polite. And he goes,
are you a man of faith?
and I said, well, I was raised Roman Catholic. I said, and I kind of think of myself as Christian agnostic now, but I am a very spiritual person.
Well, you might want to check this out.
And he went to give me the card, and I said, no, I don't accept anything that's printed by Watchtower Group. I'm sorry. And he was kind of taken aback because it doesn't look like a Jehovah's Witness card. It literally just says jw.org and then has a QR code on the back. So they've changed stuff up a little bit. They don't just, identify themselves as elder, whatever. I digress. So after they leave, they're doing some kind of construction here, and there's this dirt path. And by dirt, I mean like literally just, normally it would be mud if it was wet, but it was a dirt path, and they had these poles with these lights going across. Now, nobody was at this monastery. He said, the construction guy said that there was a monk that was walking around somewhere. And when the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door, by the way, the monk didn't answer. Weird. Maybe he was meditating. I digress. So I start walking over this hill, and the first thing I notice is that they have like this little playground area for kids. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I keep walking, and I start to see the statue come up, between the trees, and it is huge. And there's this big red area that's around it, like a half fence almost, made of concrete with these really intricate sculpting in the base of the statue itself. And the ground is really smooth concrete with like these blue flecks in them. And there's these beautiful orange and pink and purple and yellow flowers everywhere. And there's these amazing flags that are like the International Buddhism flag, which reminds me a lot of a pride flag. And then 2 lions. And as I went to walk up to it, I looked down and I realized, there's a lot here. This feels like sacred ground. This feels like a place that either I shouldn't be or I should at least be respectful of. And I don't know what the etiquette is. I haven't even asked permission to be here. So, I don't want to step on anybody's toes or appear at all disrespectful. And so the first thing I do, hi, Sonny. The first thing I do, Sonny's my dog, by the way. The first thing I do is instinctively, I take my shoes off. Right? And I'm just standing there, and I'm kind of nervous to cross essentially the threshold onto this smooth concrete area. And I look down, and there's leaves everywhere. And I look over, and there's this little cheap broom. Now, I thought, I don't really see a Zen garden anywhere, so I think maybe I'll be nice and sweep up some of these leaves. And so I took my shoes off. Instinctively, and I took my shoes off and I stepped on there and I picked up the broom and I just started sweeping. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to let go of any thoughts, any expectations. And then I took my headphones off. I almost always have these on that, they're called shocks, and they're bone conduction headphones. And I took them off because I didn't want any kind of distraction. I just wanted to be completely there. I wanted to be completely in it. I wanted to be open and not influenced by anything. And I could feel the breeze, and I could smell the flowers, and I could hear the leaves, and it sounded almost like ocean waves, right? It's a very tranquil place, very serene place, right? So I pick up this broom and I start trying to sweep, and I noticed right away that like this broom was just going over a lot of the leaves. And I'm like, it was kind of frustrating at first because I'm like, no matter how hard I was pushing, I could not get this broom to move 1 or 2 leaves. And so then I realized I had this moment where I'm just like, you know what, try it a little lighter. Sure enough, I used very light strokes and the leaf came with very, very little effort, right? So I'm pushing these leaves up against the side, and I'm just kind of methodically going through and enjoying the motion of sweeping, feeling the breeze, and moving these leaves. And about halfway through, I turned around and noticed that the wind had dropped down more leaves. Now, I feel like I left it looking a lot better than it did. I picked up a lot of leaves, but I realized very, very clearly in that moment that this was a real life lesson, which is when you're trying to clean something up, all you can do is take it one sweep at a time, right? And you can't always force your way to get things done. Sometimes you have to lighten your grip, you have to react in the moment, and you have to very patiently and calmly move forward to get things done. And you'll notice that the world is still going to be a messy place, and it'll continue to get messier. But you can do your part to maybe not clean it up, but leave a positive mark in that moment. And you have that opportunity every day. The world is a better place by just you being you. Fred Rogers used to say that. I'll never forget that, Mr. Rogers. And it's so true. And so this moment of clarity of, I'm sweeping this up. I came here, I wanted to sit down and meditate, but again, I didn't know if that was disrespectful. So I'm like 75% of the way done sweeping, and a monk comes up, and he comes from behind the statue and goes, "Hi." And I said, "Oh," so I finished the little part I was there, and I brought the thing. And I explained, "Yeah, I was looking for some peace and just quiet and calm here and looking for a place to meditate." I said, I'm not trying to trespass. Is it true you're open 24/7? He goes, yeah, technically. And I said, well, and I saw the broom, so I hope you don't mind that I'm sweeping. He goes, no, it's okay. He said, he goes, "You can go anywhere you want here." And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so I felt welcome, and I felt like it was okay for me to explore a little bit. So they had this big, right behind the statue, they had this big, I want to say it's like a mountain looking, or a cave looking with cranes and a fake pond and a stream and a big red bridge that goes over it, like a walking bridge that you can go over, until I did that. And but what was amazing is this. Before I stepped off of that platform, I walked all the way back across the cement to where I had placed my shoes. And I noticed going in that there was a grasshopper that was just sitting there. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if he'll jump away. He never jumped away. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So I don't know what made me feel like I should do this, but I took my socks off and I was barefoot. I'm not a guy who ever walks around anywhere barefoot. I mean, the last time I had my feet in the grass was probably when I was a kid. And I remember my children both hated, when they were really little, having their feet in the grass because it was pokey or whatever. So I was expecting that. But I took my feet off. I walked all the way back across, and I stepped onto the grass behind this area where the statue was. And it felt so soft. And that was surprising to me, and it felt grounding. It felt very serene and peaceful. And so as I'm feeling this, I look over at the bridge, and I thought, I want to be above the water. So I walk up on top of this bridge, and I just stop in the moment. And I look down at this still water and the leaves floating in it, and just listen to the breeze and just kind of enjoyed it. And then they had this big wooden structure that kind of looked like a gazebo, but really big. And there was like a couple chairs up there and like a cot. And there was this word written in I don't know, in a language I didn't know, across the top. So I pulled out my phone and I asked ChatGPT, what is this word? And apparently it meant serenity. And so I went, okay, that's kind of cool. And they had this big stage. I thought, if I wasn't in the mindset that I'm in right now, in the mind frame I'm in, this looks like a cult compound, because they have a playground over here, and they have this huge statue over here, and they have a giant stage over here. But, knowing that it's a monastery and that Buddhists go there to pray and all that, I get it now and meditate. But anyway, so I'm taking this little walk and taking a few minutes, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go meditate. And I walked back around and to the front, and I walked back across, the shoe still off. And what was really cool about it is I sat down in front of this statue, and I put it's placing its hand down, and it's placing its other hand up. And I looked it up later, and apparently that was a mudra that they were grounding to the earth. And by having their hand up, it was opening up to enlightenment. And so when I sat down, I did a couple of mudras, and when I did that, I was just relaxing. I'm just working on my breathing, starting I was just whatever was natural, and it felt so serene, so calm, so peaceful, so cleansing, so right. It felt like what I was looking for, which was a complete stillness, right? And what's crazy is usually when I close my eyes, I see the same thing everybody else does, just black, right? But this time it was like I saw this huge light, and it was like a big light, but then there was darkness in the middle, and it was expanding out, and the light was expanding in. It was almost like as if you were looking into the sun, but with your eyes closed, but I wasn't. And it was like an eye was just looking at me and flashing back and forth. And it was just a very unique experience. And I thought, I just want clarity. I just want peace. I want to not feel this chaos that's in my heart. And in that moment, I felt this pure release. just a complete release. And it was the coolest thing. And I just let it out, you know? And so when I was done with that, I got back up, walked across, and I went to put my shoes on. The grasshopper was gone. Now, he had been there all 3 times. When I first came up, when I started sweeping, I went and took my, socks off, still there. And then, when I went to leave, he had been there. So he hopped away after I was done meditating. So I'm going to, find out if maybe there's a Buddhist story about a grasshopper at a place of worship, but it was pretty neat. It was pretty cool. So I guess my whole point on this is that it's okay to take a moment and reflect, but like really look for quiet when you do it. You know what I mean? Like, don't just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to shut off my phone and all that. No, I made sure that there was no way that I could feel or be interrupted in this place and moment of calm. And I really needed that. And it was really, really refreshing for me to feel that. I felt zoned in. So I'm glad I didn't take a nap. Now I might actually end up taking a nap now, but that's a whole nother thing. My other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, there's 2 things. So this is going to be kind of a long video. Bear with me. This is worth it. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about change. You're familiar with a caterpillar, if I can say words, fuzzy little guys. They go around enjoying the sunlight and eating leaves, right? That's all they do. They crawl around and eat leaves. Some of them are actually kind of poisonous. I don't know if you know this, but some of them, if you touch them and they poke you, see, that's Sunny. Now you can see him. If they poke you, if you're allergic to them, you might have a rash, itchy rash. Anyway, so there's these caterpillars and they go through a change. Now everybody knows a butterfly is what a caterpillar turns into, right? So let's imagine, if you will, a caterpillar crawling through the forest, and he's finding these leaves, he's getting fatter and getting fatter. And then suddenly he feels, after a certain amount of time, that he's just ready to go climb up. He's never been told to do this. He just feels compelled to go climb up onto a branch and form a cocoon and form a chrysalis, as it's called. And so he does that. Now he knows he's going to undergo change. He just instinctively, he doesn't know what, he doesn't know how, but he knows it's going to happen. So I'm going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to our friend, Mr. Caterpillar. Change is such an important thing, and so is growth. Now, have you seen the movie Frozen? I'm sure you have. In the movie Frozen, one of the trolls that they go to advice for says,
We're not saying you can change him because people don't really change.
I hated that. Personally hated that. I believe that, and I'm living proof that people can change. People do change. It's like human design, for example. So human design doesn't tell you who you are or what you are. It tells you why you are. It tells you why you interact with things the way you do, and why you react the way you do, and how you evolve over time, right? And it tells you how you're conditioned, why you're conditioned certain ways, why you react certain ways in some situations and certain ways in other, why you process information in certain ways. And so when you understand that, you can kind of change it, and you can work on the process of deconditioning yourself, right? Finding that quiet and figuring out who you're really meant to be. So important to me. Let's go back for just a minute, because change isn't always easy. Because that's the thing. Sometimes deconditioning means cutting people out of your life, cutting things out of your life that are toxic or that are not aligned with what you're supposed to be, or hurting people because you're telling them your truth, right? And some people see it as selfish. It can be a painful process. In fact, I would argue that substantial change often doesn't come without you having pain. Without you going through pain, there is no transference, right? Or there is no transformation. So let's go back to our friend the caterpillar here. A lot of people understand that he goes in a caterpillar, he comes out a butterfly. What they don't understand is what if they can feel pain, this would be agonizing. A lot of people don't realize what happens inside the cocoon. The cocoon protects the caterpillar as it literally melts down at a molecular level into what I can only describe as goo. I'm sure there's a scientific name for it, but it's literally just goo. And it's literally nothing inside that cocoon. So as it's undergoing the changes that it undergoes over a certain period of time, it goes from being a nice fuzzy little caterpillar into this primordial goo, if you will, and then slowly it forms legs, and it forms arms, and it forms wings. And what's really crazy about that is that it's not easy for this newborn butterfly who used to be a caterpillar to break out of this cocoon. They built it, but it's not easy for them to break out of it. It actually has to use its wings, and it has to work really hard. It takes a lot of strength for this newborn butterfly to break out of the cocoon. And again, I can assume that if they feel any pain, that's probably pretty painful. So we're going to put a pin in that, and we'll return to our butterfly friend after I just had something else pop up. So stick with me. I promise you this butterfly analogy is going to come to a conclusion in a minute here. When I say we change, I mean we literally change physically every 7 years. Our cells, as you may or may not know, die off every day. We shed cells, they die. Skin cells, whatever, all of our cells. Every cell in your body within 7 years will have died off and been reborn. So you are literally a completely different person today than you were 7 years ago. And tomorrow, you'll be a different person tomorrow than you were 7 years ago tomorrow, right? So you're physically, psychologically, every single cell in your body has been reborn every 7 years, okay? And if you look at it, there's a lot of 7-year cycles that happen in life. And in human design, there's a lot of 7-year cycles too. You can definitely look into that, especially if you have a VitaBot. I highly recommend find out about your timeline. Ask it your life's timeline, and it's pretty amazing what it'll tell you where you're at in that. So the idea that we can't change is bullshit. We often don't want to change because it's painful to have to try and make changes. It can be scary, and the fear of the unknown stops us. Analysis paralysis, imposter syndrome, all of these things can stop us dead in our tracks from embracing change. And you just have to remember that every 7 years you're a new person. But what happens after you go through that pain is often remarkable. You not only learn lessons, but you get a completely different perspective. And to highlight that, I'm going to go back to my butterfly friend. So he's sitting in this thing. He's trying to break out of the chrysalis. He's trying so hard to just get out, right? Finally, he gets his wings out, and they're finally strong enough. Since he's been working on trying to break out of this chrysalis, they're finally strong enough that he can fly away. Now, when he flies, you got to realize this thing has only ever experienced life at a ground level, at leaf level, maybe on a tree at the highest. Now it can soar to new heights. It can experience wind. It can experience what the world looks like from a completely different vantage point that it never would have seen if it hadn't had to go through the painful evolution that comes with change. See what I did there? Same thing is true in human design. Same thing is true in personal discovery. And that's kind of where I've been with all of this. The last couple of weeks, especially, I've been really going through a phase of personal discovery and I guess evolution, especially spiritually. I mean, I spent several years of my life learning the grind, getting my work ethic in place, and then I went to college for 7 years. I don't know. I have a master's degree, so however many years that is. I went to college, got that degree, and that was my academic, and that played into the career side. I built my family, and here's another interesting thing about that. My wife and I get married. We wait 7 years and have a daughter. Then we wait 7 more and have a son. So I'm telling you, 7 is a very interesting number, not just in my life, but I think in everybody's lives if you look for it. And, you know, there's the whole correlation thing. It's just weird. My point is that I've gone through my whole life going through and embracing these changes. And that is part of my design too. I am designed to observe, get a different picture, and really embrace the change and then live it and embody it. And I feel like that's what I'm doing more and more every day. As far as how this all plays into my design, I have what's called the right angle cross of the Sphinx. And what that means is I'm not here to force change. I'm not here to force you to change. I'm here to guide other people. I offer direction, right? I act as a compass. I like to think of myself as like a lighthouse, right? I can illuminate the path, but you have to be the one to take it. I can orient you to the truth of your own evolution, just by living mine, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I will tell you, this is something I know, and I hope you take it to heart. When you believe that you can't change, you're living from fear, not from truth. So I would encourage you to question that. I would encourage you to say, what am I really afraid of? Who am I worried about upsetting? And is it what I really want? Am I doing this for me or for someone else? And then go from there. I think the leaf lesson that I gave before, by the way, the leaf lesson from the broom is what made me think of the caterpillar thing. So this whole idea for this episode came to me because of being at this monastery, which I never even intended to do this morning when I woke up. It was pretty amazing. The leaf lesson about you can't force things. You have to sometimes just gently adapt and go with it and accept the things that you can't. The old serenity prayer. What I've learned in all of this is that change isn't about becoming something new even at all. It's about remembering who you were and embracing that before the world told you who you were supposed to be. And that's what the deconditioning process is about, is remembering who you truly are and embracing that. I encourage you to embrace change, to look at your life and see where you are in your own cocoon and how different your life could be if you were to break free of it and embrace change and see what happens. And sometimes it's good things, sometimes it's not good things, but there's always lessons to be learned, and you can't learn those lessons if you just sit in the safety and serenity of your current situation, your current environment. And maybe you're happy, maybe you're content there. Cool, then never mind, but thanks for coming on this journey with me and mine. Talk to me. What's going on in your mind? What's going on in your life? What changes are you trying to tackle? Let's open a dialogue in the comments below and encourage each other, support each other, because I think this is something that the more we can talk about, the more we can connect on, the more it'll affect everybody. You never know how your story could affect someone else. So again, thanks for being you. Thanks for being a part of my journey as you walk yours.